All right, let's talk about building websites. We're going to go beyond just stacking boxes on a page. Today, we're diving into how to build sites that have actual, understandable meaning. It's all about moving from generic containers to a structure that tells a story. But to really get that, we have to ask a fundamental question. If you had X-ray vision and could look through a web page, what would you actually see? What's the real skeleton holding it all together? You'd see this, just a bunch of boxes, nested inside other boxes, inside even more boxes. Because that's the one non-negotiable, unbreakable rule of the web. Absolutely everything, a headline, an image, a button, you name it, is a rectangular box. Okay, so let's really dig into this. This whole idea is called the CSS box model, and it's our ground truth. Every single one of these boxes has 4 layers to it, and once you get these 4 layers, you basically understand how every single web page layout is built. So let's start from the inside and work our way out. Right at the heart of every box, you've got the content. This is the good stuff, right? It's the whole reason we're here. The text you're reading, the picture you're looking at, it's the substance. Now, wrapped right around that content is the padding. You can think of it like the little cardboard matting in a picture frame. It just gives the content some breathing room, you know? It keeps it from feeling all cramped and pushed up against the edges. Next up is the border. This is the literal wall of the box. It can be a thick black line, a thin dotted one, or it can be completely invisible. But make no mistake, it's always there, defining the absolute edge of the element. And finally, on the very outside, you have the margin. I like to think of this as the element's personal space bubble. It's that invisible force field that pushes all the other boxes away, creating that clean separation and structure on the page. And this is what it looks like in actual code. It's not complicated at all. Just a few simple lines of CSS, and you've told a box exactly how wide it should be, how much padding it needs, what its border looks like, and how much space to keep from its neighbors. So, if everything on the web is a box, what's the most common tool we use to make all these boxes? Well, for a long time, the answer has been the good old div tag. It's the developer's universal hammer. If you need to build something, you grab a div. And this right here shows you exactly why it's so popular. Over on the right, you have inline elements, like a span. They just sit nicely inside a sentence. But a div? Oh no. A div is a block element. It's a space hog. It greedily takes up the entire available width and shoves everything that comes after it onto a new line. That's what makes it so perfect for building out the big structural parts of a page. But because it's so useful, it leads to this very common problem. It's a kind of anxiety a lot of new developers feel when they look back at their code. Let's call it a classic case of div-itis. And this is a totally real and relatable feeling. Just look at this quote from a developer on Reddit. They ask, "I use a lot of divs. I always feel like my approach isn't the appropriate way to code. Am I doing it the right way?" I mean, how many of us have felt that exact same thing? It really hits home. Then another user chimes in with this classic developer trick for getting that X-ray vision we talked about earlier. You just add this one tiny line of CSS and boom, every single box on the page gets a bright red outline. It instantly reveals the hidden skeleton of the entire website. And what does that X-ray usually show? A condition that's someone perfectly named divception. It's just divs inside of divs, nested inside of even more divs. Yeah, the page might look fine on the surface, but the underlying structure has absolutely zero meaning. So if that sea of generic, meaningless boxes is the problem, then what's the solution? Well, this brings us to a much more elegant, a much smarter way of doing things. Building with meaning, all thanks to Semantic HTML. And hey, this isn't just my opinion. This comes straight from the top. The official HTML5 specification, the rulebook for the web, says you should see the div element as a last resort. Basically, only grab that hammer when you've looked through your whole toolbox and no other specific tool will work. So what's in this new toolbox? Well, instead of just a generic div, HTML5 gives us all these awesome descriptive tags. We've got header for your site's intro, main for all the core content, and footer for the stuff at the bottom. You can wrap a blog post in an article, group related bits into a section, and put all your main links inside a nav. Every tag actually tells you what its job is. So this brings us to the million-dollar question, when do you use a section versus a div? Well, here's a fantastic rule of thumb. Just ask yourself, would this chunk of content make sense in a table of contents? If the answer is yes, then you should probably use a section. If the answer is no, and you just need a container for styling purposes, then a div is your tag. Okay, So let's boil all this down into a new best practice. A clear, simple way of thinking that's going to make your code so much better, starting right now. It's really just a simple 3-step checklist. First, before you even type a tag, just stop and ask, what is this content's actual job? Is it a header, a main article? Second, always reach for a semantic tag first. See if an article or a section or a nav is the right fit. And finally, step 3. If and only if no other descriptive tag makes sense and you just need a wrapper for styling, then you can use a div. So why does all this matter so much? Well, there are 2 huge payoffs. First, it makes your website way more accessible. People using screen readers rely on these meaningful tags to navigate your page. And it helps search engines like Google understand your content better. Second, it makes the code so much easier for you and for anyone else on your team to read and maintain down the line. It's just self-documenting. So I'll leave you with a little challenge. Go look at the last website you built. Throw that little CSS trick on it and turn on the X-ray vision. What does its skeleton look like? Do you see a clean, meaningful structure, or do you find a pretty bad case of divception?